Good evening. I'd like to call to order council meeting of January 13th, 2025. Everyone that can, please rise for the playing of the national anthem.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Carton brasse porter le pays, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Niagara Region and Grimsby are situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendourong, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Regional Municipality of Niagara and the Town of Grimsby stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest? Councillor Corstangi.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to declare for closed session 8.4, non-pecuniary.
All right, that's so noted. Councillor Charwa.
I will be in discussion, but I will not be voting on the notice of motion by Councillor Vardy should it be lifted for consideration today.
All right, thank you. That'll be noted. Before we approve the agenda, the clerk will provide an update. Tori?
So we have received a delegation request to speak on the notice of motion on the agenda. Section 7.5, subsection 5D of the procedural bylaw does state that no delegation shall be permitted on matters relating to notice of motion, provided the delegates have an opportunity to speak at a subsequent committee or council meeting on the topic. As the mover and seconder of the notice of motion have requested for it to be discussed tonight, which does require a 2/3 approval vote. If the 2/3 is achieved tonight, council does have the opportunity to vote to add the delegation on the agenda. A simple majority is required for that. A reminder that the delegate request was complete, on time, and within the parameters of the procedural bylaw. If 2/3 is not achieved for the notice of motion tonight, both the notice of motion and delegation requests will be forwarded to the February 10th council meeting. Both the vote for the notice of motion and, if approved, adding the delegation takes place under item 18 on the agenda.
Great, thank you for that update. Can I have a mover and seconder to approve the agenda? Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that the January 13th, 2025 council meeting agenda be approved. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, we have regional councillor update. Councillor Seaborn, welcome to the podium.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan, and I'd like to wish everybody a Happy New Year at this point. I thought I'd start the year off with a little video. I've actually asked Katie if she could cue this up for you. I found this video was really quite handy. What I want to tackle today is the relationship between property assessment and property taxes. I know it's that time of year again and everybody's going to start thinking about them, and there's so much confusion between what is the assessed value, what is the realty value, and how are property taxes determined. So Katie, if you've got a moment.
Property taxes are based on your home's value. What you might not know is that an increase in your home's value doesn't necessarily mean your taxes will go up. To explain, let's take a look at how your property taxes are calculated. Imagine there's a town that only has 3 homes, and they're each worth a different amount. The total cost to provide all of the town's services is $1,200. This is collected through property taxes. Each homeowner pays property taxes based on their home's assessed value. So we take the total cost of services and divide it by the total property value. This tax rate is applied to all the houses to get enough money to pay for the town's services. Each homeowner pays according to the assessed value of their home, and every 4 years, the houses are reassessed. Let's say all 3 properties have gone up equally in value. The total cost of services hasn't changed, but the total property value has increased. When this happens, there will be a decrease in the tax rate. Now, when we apply that new rate on all the homes, everyone still pays the same. Now, let's say another 4 years has gone by, and these homes are reassessed. During this time, the house on the right gains more market value than the other 2. The total value of all the homes have increased, which means the town has to calculate a new tax rate. With this new tax rate, the first 2 homes will actually pay less than the home on the right that was reassessed at a higher value. Since the cost of services hasn't changed, the town doesn't need to collect more property taxes on the whole. However, since property taxes are based on a home's value, taxes for each individual home could potentially go up or down based on the rest of the homes. So, what happens when the cost to provide services goes up? Well, it means more property taxes need to be collected from every home, and a new tax rate is calculated. To get the new rate, we take that amount that the town now needs and divide it by all of the property values. The new rate is applied to all the homes, and now everyone has to pay the new tax amount to continue to fund the town's services. So, let's review. 1. Property taxes are based on the assessed value of a home. If all assessments go up equally, everyone pays the same. 2. If all assessments do not go up equally, there's a redistribution of the tax. 3. If the town's cost to provide services increases, the municipality may choose to increase the tax rate. When this happens, everyone pays their share of that increase. And that explains the relationship between property value and property taxes.
Thank you. So that's a real simplistic look of it. Of course, we have a bit more than 3 houses in Grimsby, and I'm sure taxes are going to be a little bit more than $1,000 to run the entire community. But it does give you an idea of how it comes about. And I think one of the main things that people get confused about is, first of all, the numbers on your assessment is based in 2016. It has not been reassessed in 2020, nor will it be reassessed for 2024. So you're still paying in 2016 values. So you're going to look at your tax bill and you're going to say, okay, well, my bill is X. My property is worth way more than that, so does that mean I have to calculate what I think my property is worth and the assessment, and oh my gosh, now I'm paying 4 times what they suggest? This comes about because they often tell you, based on a home of $289,000, with the increase in taxes, you will now pay $102 more. Well, they know their house is worth a lot more than $289,000, so they up it artificially. And that, unfortunately, does cause a lot of frustration with people, and it's a lot of misinformation. So I thought this was a handy little video to show you. It's easier than trying to explain it all. And it, I think, gives you a good idea of where it goes. Now, provided everybody's property goes up at the same value, does it mean that now 8 years past, my house is now worth $800,000? Does that mean that now I have to base it on $800,000? It just changes because everybody is changing at the same rate. Okay? So the one thing I did want to point out is your assessment can be changed if you've made a change to your building, or if there has been a permit issued for a home addition, or a pool, or a garage, shed, or other changes that affect its value. Otherwise, it will proportionately go up the next time it's there. It's only if you've made changes. So if your property has decreased in value, the assessment will show that, but in most cases, your property will have increased in value. The other thing to keep in mind is Your taxes are your property taxes are the only thing that is based on assessment and not your ability to pay. So if you look at your federal and provincial tax, they all come off your income. So you pay based on what you earn, which is presumably what you're able to afford. The taxes for your municipal, your regional, and your educational are all based on assessment. And that's pretty much all I wanted to cover today. If you have questions, if you don't think you've got the right assessment value, I was just reassessed. It wasn't pretty. But if you figure that you got, if there's been a mistake made, you can contact them. You're going to need the numbers that are available on your tax bill or on a reassessment bill. You can contact them either by email or phone and ask for a reassessment if you think there's a problem. Okay? Is there any questions about that I might be able to answer? Oh, dear.
Thank you for your presentation. Councillor Davoli.
Yes, Councillor Seaborn. You were quite right when you mentioned that 2016 was the last time we went through a revaluation of market values, and the province has been putting it off for quite some time. A few months ago, many municipalities were circulating a request to other municipalities to join them in requesting the province to update and finally undertake another reassessment. Can you tell me what the response and position was of the region of Niagara to this, and how you have reached out to the province about this issue?
I'm afraid I can't answer that because I am not aware that the region has asked for it. I know there's lots of municipalities that have, and it's because of this confusion based on assessed value versus realty value. And of course, in 8 years, we've seen a lot of changes in the value of homes. And again, it won't matter what that number is, as long as you are in par with everybody else in the neighborhood.
If I could just add to that, I think one of the concerns is, as was noted in the example, that sometimes certain properties go up by more than other properties, right? So it would be very unusual for all the properties in town to increase in value by the exact same amount, right? Which then throws off the calculation of who pays what, right? Because you could have commercial properties who have gone up significantly in value and residential properties who may not have, and I'm just making up an example. And yet the commercial property may be still valued at the lower rate and therefore not paying as much tax based upon the principle that we use in property taxation, which is basically based upon net worth, right? Or based upon the value of the property. So it is a concern that after 8 and soon it'll be 9 years of not adjusting, that we have undergone some misalignment within, residential, commercial, industrial, and so on. And that the best way to make it a fair playing field again is to encourage the province to update their market values. So I guess if I could leave that thought with you, we certainly like the region to join in with us and in taking a position on it and encouraging the province to ask MPAC to move on that issue. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, and I'm sure that'll be in the works before too much longer. There's only one other thing that I'd like to mention, if I could, and I see that Councillor DeFlavio's hand is up. I just wanted to mention, only because I've had a few calls about this, tomorrow is the day that the new camera comes live. So the new speed camera is located, it's actually just the other side of the YMCA, but it covers that area by the high school. The speed does not change, so it's still the posted 50. But it does come live tomorrow, and it'll be live for 3 months. Sorry.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. So that was going to be one of my questions, so thanks for answering that. The other one, going back to what Councillor Davoli said about the reassessment, I imagine that now, after 8 years or 9 years, the task is almost overwhelming at the provincial level, because the reassessment of every property in Ontario is a task that I don't envy. And once that occurs, because there's been so much time since the last assessment, the process, the appeal process, which is undoubtedly going to be because when people see their reassessment and they see it compared to other people's properties, and you're allowed to use your comparator properties and all the things that go with that, I can't imagine what the appeal process is going to be like. So I'm concerned that it was left alone for so long, and I'm also concerned about what that's going to look like when it occurs, and the ripple effect that it has on everything else. Because I know from like the landlord-tenant board, for example, is a couple years behind, and this is a similar type process where the appeal process might take years. So yes, I'm in favor of the reassessment, but I don't know how that's going to happen or what it's going to look like, and I'm concerned at the provincial level about the scope of it, because it's massive. So, yeah, let's light a fire, but I don't know what's going to happen as a result of that. That's the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think you actually had a question in there, but I will remind you that Sam Oosterhoff's office is in Beamsville, and he's probably the person to be speaking to.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation, Michelle. Have a good evening.
We're going to need to clear the gap.
We are going to be moving into closed session, so we will need to clear the gallery. So we'll take a couple minutes to do that. All right, I'll read the resolution. Can I have a mover and seconder to enter closed session? Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that council meet in closed session under Section 2392E of the Municipal Act to discuss litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. Section 2392B of the Municipal Act to discuss personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. And Section 2392K of the Municipal Act to discuss a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. All in favor to go into closed? All right, we're going into closed. We will be open, resuming after the closed session. We'll move back to open. session. A of the closed session report, and that direction provided in closed session regarding the Peach King Center naming rights sponsor be approved. All in favor? That's carried. All right, now we're moving on to chair's reports. Councillor Charrois, please go ahead.
Through Mayor, thank you. Our Community Services Committee met on December 12th, 2024, and there were 3 notable items discussed. The first being the Santa Claus Parade. There's a recap by Melissa Rusich, the Town Special Events Coordinator, and the Grimsby Santa Claus Parade. And it was estimated that 15,000 people were in attendance and several thousand views on various live stream links. It was reported that the Grimsby firefighters, who were busy gathering the food donations along the parade, collected 1,072 kilograms of food and $1,600 in monetary donations for GBF, which speaks volumes to the generosity of our community. I'd like to take a moment to recognize and thank our parade committee, which consisted of Chair Robin Bradley, involved in her 32nd parade committee, Andrea Cody, Amy Lupton, and Trevor Rosillo. Special thank you to all who volunteered their time on the day of the parade, as well as our sponsors, Harmony Jewelers, Boondog Offices Spaces, Canadian Tire, Sobkowich Greenhouses, Sobeys, and Leuna 837. And a thank you to all those who put in floats for the event. And this presentation finished with the Parade Committee Chair, Robin Bradley, and Deputy Mayor Korstanji presenting the parade awards to various organizations. The second notable item being that we had heard a delegation from Ron Morrow, the president of the Grimsby Tennis Club, for an update on the club. One of the mentions was the need for a new clubhouse large enough to continue to host major events and a storage facility for equipment. Director of Community Services, Sarah Sweeney, briefed us on the need for a new clubhouse as it was built in 1980 and the cost to renovate are substantial and is not currently accessible, which is mandatory by AODA standards. This is being included in the budget for final council consideration. Based on reviews and assessments, Director Sweeney found that the most cost-effective option would be to replace the current dated clubhouse with a modular, movable version, similar to a classroom portable with accessible washrooms at ground level, and the committee supported this modular recommendation. As stated, it's in the budget for final council approval. Third notable item was a report from our recreation supervisor, Trevor Rosillo, about the Mayfair pickleball survey results and recommendations. I declared a non-pecuniary interest based on my mother being a member of the Grimsby Pickleball Association, so I abstained from discussion and voting on this item. The committee supported staff recommendations for the changes to the allocation of court use. Lastly, Committee Vice Chair, Councillor Korstanji, and I concluded the meeting thanking our community services staff for all their hard work in 2024 in providing such meaningful benefits to our residents and their families. Their hard work behind the scenes has not gone unnoticed. And our next community services meeting is scheduled for January 28th. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Charrois. I will give the update on the 2 planning meetings that we had before, or since our December council meeting. We had a meeting on December 4th and again on January 8th, 1 item on each of those meetings, and it was the same item, 152 Main Street West, opening of another daycare facility at St. Andrew's Church. They're converting the rental house into more daycare spots, which is a great thing for the town. And there was no one there to speak against it. So there were just people speaking for it. Again, they met all the parking and pick up and drop off, and so it was very easy to approve from a planning perspective, and we're really happy to welcome additional daycare spaces in town. Can I have a mover and seconder to approve the previous minutes? Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Vardy. Before we approve the minutes, Councillor Bradzi has a Community Services Committee question that will not result in a change of direction. Can you ask your question now, Councillor Bradzi?
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Through you, I just wanted to ask the chair, With the conflict of interest, did you consider asking for approval to continue and talk? I'm not going to speak for council or the committee, but if it was up to me, I wouldn't be concerned with your mother playing pickleball, and I would very much like you to continue into the discussions for the pickleball. As we know, it's not in a great situation.
Thank you, Councillor Bradsey. Given the fact that I've had 6 Integrity Commissioner complaints, I didn't want to take a chance on it coming back, so I just abstained 100%. I did have a lot of interesting input that I would have liked to have brought forward, but I didn't want to take that chance.
I mean, I don't know if council feels the other way, but that's not a conflict I think we need to be worried with. I think it's good to see involvement into the community on issues.
Yeah, that question seems different than the one you were talking about before, so.
Do you have one for staff?
I thought it was a staff question that you had. Yeah, pickleball.
Yeah, it's
staff
good, but
question.
pickleball is going to be on the next council meeting, so I just wanted to make sure that we are addressing the issue and giving the issue the attention that it needs.
All right, that's noted. All right, so I have moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that the following minutes be approved. Council, December 2nd, 2024. Planning and Development Committee, December 4th, 2024. Community Service Committee, December 12th, 2024. Planning and Development Committee, January 8th, 2025. All in favor? That's carried. All right, can I have a mover and seconder to receive the board minutes? Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Korstanji. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Korstanji. Resolved that the following board minutes be received. Committee of Adjustment, November 20th, 2024. Grimsby Public Library Board, November 20th, 2024. Joint Fire Services Advisory Committee, December 3rd, 2024. Grimsby Downtown BIA, December 11th, 2024. Property Standards Committee and Committee of Adjustment, December 17th, 2024. All in favor? That's carried. Are there any announcements for this evening? Councillor Vardy first, and then Councillor Korstanji.
Thank you very much. I would just like to share with you that the Cooper Robertson Foundation has given their annual Rainbow Award to myself and to Christina Davidson and to the town of Grimsby for what we did with respect to, fielding a team and the support that both Christina and I had given to the organization. So that was a very nice thing, and I just thought I'd share that with everybody.
Well, that's really great to hear, and congratulations. And I just want to thank council and staff for really taking the Cooper Robinson Foundation under our wing and really making it our own, and certainly knowing that they are very receptive of our charity. So that's just really makes me happy. Councillor Korstanji.
Thank you, through Chair. I would like to congratulate our West Niagara Rock Stars, our Special Olympics curling team, who curl out of the Grimsby Curling Club. They qualified on the weekend to go to the provincial championships in Cobourg. So they curled all day Saturday in Milton to clinch that spot and finally beat out Hamilton. Some very experienced curlers from Hamilton, but they managed to do it, so they'll be representing the town of Grimsby in Cobourg. I believe it's on the 25th, so congratulations to the Rock Stars. And just a shout out to the Grimsby Curling Club, who Special Olympics practice there, but our competitive curling team practices in the Sunday Night League with all the players, and they've been getting some great practice and great acceptance with the players from the curling club, so thank you for that. You've helped them along. So,
seeing no further announcements, I just have one. I just want to thank all the residents that came out on January 5th to the Art Gallery and Library, to the Mayor's Levee. We had quite a few people there, and thank the councillors that came to the event, and really just to thank the MIAC committee for doing a great job with the face painting, with the movie, the collages, and giving out hot chocolate and donuts. It was a really good time. It was a lot of fun being there. And it was nice to be at the Art Gallery and Library to open up the new year. Can I have a mover and seconder for the consent report? Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Davoli. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Davoli. Resolved that Council hereby approves the following item and the consent item be approved and the recommendation contained therein. PA 25-03, the Committee of Adjustment Process Improvements amended, dated January 13th, 2025, be received. All in favor? That's carried. Can I have a mover and seconder to get the 2025 Parasport Games sponsorship report on the floor for discussion? Moved by Councillor Davoli, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Katie, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the town's accessibility advisor had reached out at the end of 2024, just inquiring about the sponsorship of one of the sports in the 2025 Ontario Parasport Games, which will be held from May 30th to June 1st of this year. Recommending the sponsorship of a specific sport allows the committee and council to understand the sport and the athletes they are supporting, and as such, the town is recommending the sponsorship of goalball. The cost of the sponsorship is $5,500 and would be included in the 2025 budget for council's consideration. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Katie. Questions or comments from council? Councillor Korstange.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I don't have questions, but I do have some comments. So I'm obviously a big fan of parasport, so I will try to keep this quick. Parasport is super important, and I know that we have local athletes that participate in a multitude of sports in parasport. So it's nice to it's nice that Niagara is hosting this, and it's nice to have the opportunity to support local athletes. I myself started a para track club in Niagara. It's the only ambulatory all para track club, I believe, in Ontario, if not Canada. I have a few local athletes, and I have athletes from Brampton and Hamilton, Pelham, Lincoln, Grimsby, and my club will be hopefully participating in the para-athletics, and I know what the opportunity to compete at home and be a local club means to my athletes, so I can only imagine what competing in other sports like goalball and stuff like that will mean. So obviously I'm a huge supporter, and I think this is a great opportunity for us, and hopefully with the games coming and being so accessible to us in Niagara, that many people from the community and council will go out and watch a couple of different sports and learn about a few things.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Korstange. Seeing no further questions or comments, certainly something that's really, I'm proud that the town will be sponsoring this event. Resolved that, moved by Councillor Davoli, second by Councillor DeFlavio, resolved that report FIN 25-01, 2025 Parasport Games sponsorship dated January 13th, 2025 be received, and that the town of Grimsby become a Paramazing sports sponsor of goalball at the 2025 Ontario Parasport Games, and that the Paramazing sports sponsor fee of $5,500 be included as part of the 2025 budget for council consideration. All in favor? That's carried. Also, can I have a mover and seconder to get the OLT representation report on the floor for discussion? Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Okay. All right. Since it was, we spoke about that in close. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor DeFlavio, will resolve that report PA 25-04, appeal of site plan application 26 SP 1624-07 at 141 to 149 Main Street East, Town Representation of the Ontario Land Tribunal dated January 13, 2025 be received, and that legal counsel be retained to represent the town on application 26 SP 1624-07 at the Ontario Land Tribunal. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, we have notice of motion. Councillor Vardy, can you please read your notice of motion?
Whereas Councillor Charrois has demonstrated a pattern of behavior that repeatedly violates Grimsby's Code of Conduct, resulting in negatively affecting the reputation of council, lay members, and the town of Grimsby. And whereas Councillor Charrois has exhibited disrespect and non-cooperation towards the Integrity Commissioner throughout the investigations, as noted in the IC reports, and further refuses to acknowledge any wrongdoings. And whereas there has been a clear lack of remorse or accountability for such actions across all of the IC reports, knowing that it is imperative to uphold the integrity and standards of this council. And whereas Councillor Charrois has continued to engage in conduct unbecoming of an elected official, which undermines the values and reputation of this council, its committee members, and the town of Grimsby. And whereas the following 6 Code of Conduct investigations and reports by the Integrity Commissioner has clearly established repetitious breaches of our Code of Conduct, and I'll read them. April 15, 2024, IC report 28571, recommended 15-day suspension. July, and council passed and voted 15 days. July 8, 2024, IC report 28126, recommended 45 days pay suspension. Council passed, voted 45 days. Is there an issue? I'm trying to read the notice of motion.
Councillor Charrois, what's your point of order?
I'm just going to ask that you, rather than you skip over sections, if you could read all of the details in all of these, I'd appreciate it. So starting at April 15th, if you could read who they were from and what, all of that stuff, rather than skip through. Thank you.
I can do that. So April 15, 2024, IC report number IC 28571-1223, Jordan versus Charrois. IC recommended 15 days pay suspension. Council passed, voted 15 days. July 8, 2024, IC report number IC 28126-1123/IC 28337-1323, Freak versus Charrois. IC recommended 45 days pay suspension. Council passed/voted 45 days. November 4, 2024, IC report number IC 31896-0524, Freak versus Charrois. IC recommended a reprimand. Council passed, voted a reprimand. December 2nd, 2024, IC report number IC 33206-07246/IC-33645-0824, lay members and Freak versus Charrois. IC recommended 60 days pay suspension. Council passed/voted 60 days. And whereas despite the penalties and reprimands arising from the above noted IC reports, as shown in council minutes, the summation of penalties, relevant actions incurred were 1 reprimand, 1 suspension of pay for 15 days, 1 suspension of pay for 45 days, 1 suspension of pay for 60 days. And despite these penalties, Councillor Charrois has yet to show regrets or admit any type of wrongdoing. And whereas the behaviors as noted herein has serious repercussions on reputations and working relationships with council members, staff, lay members, and creates serious non-confidence in the public mind that council has lost its way. And whereas Councillor Chauhat, as a result of the before-mentioned breaches of the Code of Conduct, and despite the number of infractions, has shown a total lack of remorse, has accepted no responsibility for her actions, and no apologies to the affected parties, including the public. Therefore, be it resolved that Council recommends the following actions. That Councillor Chauhat be immediately removed as Chair and/or Deputy Chair from any and all Council standing committees, advisory, and subcommittees for this term of Council, but be allowed to continue as a member of one committee she currently sits on. That Councillor Chauhat be required to undergo training at the town's expense on ethical governance and council codes of conduct, as well as how to work within a team environment. Such courses specifically being the 3 AMO courses entitled Navigating Conflict as an Elected Official, Parts 1 and 2, and Municipal Codes of Conduct, Essential to Good Governance. Furthermore, that she provide proof of completion of these courses within the next 5 months. That Councillor Chauhat be prohibited from assuming the role of Deputy Mayor during this term of Council. That Council direct staff to report within 6 months on whether Councillor Chauhat has complied with the above. Be it further noted, this resolution is an important step to safeguard the reputation and integrity of Council, the town, and its staff and committee lay members, and to uphold the trust of the public, and to encourage all councillors to adhere to the highest ethical standards as outlined in our Code of Conduct policy and our sworn declaration to uphold high standards in the best interests of our town. I request, contingent on a 2/3 majority vote, that this notice of motion be given consideration at the January 13, 2025 meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Vardy. Councillor Vardy has moved and Councillor Davoli has seconded, suspending the rules to speak to this motion tonight in order for it to be formally included. Sections 7.71 and 9.82A of the procedural bylaw need to be waived. As per Section 12.1, a 2/3 majority vote is needed to suspend the rules. There will be no discussion on this item at this time. Please use your e-scribe to vote. All right, the resolution is moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Davoli. Resolved that the rules of procedure be temporarily suspended by an affirmative vote of 2/3 to discuss Councillor Vardy's notice of motion on council member conduct. So we're waiting for the e-scribe to come up. All right, that was carried. Can I have a mover and seconder to permit Annette Gibbons' delegation? A majority vote is needed. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor DeFlavio. I guess we'll vote e-scribe on this one as well. All right, that is carried. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Resolved that Annette Gibbons be permitted to delegate on the notice of motion.
So Annette can come up.
Annette, welcome to the podium. Jeanette, just before you begin, I just want you to please follow the rules of decorum for this council. Thank you.
What do you mean by that?
What I just mean is you don't need to, once you start to make personal accusations, if that I will have to stop you.
I think I'm being respectful in my presentation.
Perfect. Great. That's all I ask.
Good evening and Happy New Year. Mayor Jordan, councillors, town staff, and residents of Grimsby. My name is Annette Gibbons, and I'm a lifetime resident of Grimsby and live on Lawrence Avenue. I'm here tonight to voice my opposition of Councillor Vardy's motion regarding council member conduct and ask council to vote no and defeat tonight's motion. This being the very first council meeting of 2025, I had very high hopes of starting off the new year on a positive note. However, I am completely disheartened at seeing this motion that continues in what appears to be a collective personal vendetta and attack on Councillor Schwerow. If anyone deserves an apology, it's the residents of Grimsby for this council's misuse and squandering of hundreds of thousands of our hard-earned tax dollars on all of these Integrity Commissioner investigations. Who does this serve, other than putting money into the hands of whoever has the contract for these investigations? I am asking you, how do you justify spending this money when residents are struggling just to live and put food on the table or even pay the rent? Are you all so disconnected with what is happening in your own communities you haven't noticed where the priorities lie? I understand the average cost of an IC investigation is approximately $30,000. Times that by 6, you get approximately $180,000 just in these investigations against this councillor tonight. It will be interesting to see what the actual costs are in the town's 2025 budget talks and what services will be eliminated. It will also be interesting to compare those costs with our town of 30,000 residents of that of Toronto, with a population of 3 million, whose own self-run Integrity Commissioner office in 2024 was only $70,000 net. Grimsby being 1% of the size of Toronto, unless our IC expenses are under $7,000 from 2024, in my opinion, this council is overspending and not respecting the residents and their tax dollars meant to improve the town. Those filing the complaints are well aware of the cost of these investigations and started putting taxpayers on the hook the moment they filed. I am sure all that money saved could have been better spent servicing the community. This continued attack on duly elected councillor is shameful. The IC made his recommendations, council imposed penalties it saw fit, and the decisions have already been rendered. Unless there are some new earth-shattering allegations of misconduct that are being held back, reopening this matter and imposing any further penalties sends a clear signal to residents that this council is unfairly targeting people with malicious intent. Apologies, or the lack thereof, are not a punishable act, and there is no legal requirement for one. This motion is attempting to re-adjudicate matters that have already been dealt with. Can you imagine
having a judge impose a penalty for an offense only to have you brought back to court after they felt it was, because they felt it was not enough. There is finality in the decisions from the IC investigations. It is the path that was chosen, and now is the time for council to own it and move on. This motion is also the political equivalent of constructive dismissal. By basically making things so onerous and difficult for the councillor that there is a clear attempt to provoke her resignation. This motion, if passed, also does a huge disservice to her constituents. Councillor Giroux was duly elected by the people of her ward. To remove her as chair or deputy chair of committees she's serving on, to not allow her to serve in the role of deputy mayor, as every other councillor gets, does not allow her the opportunity to serve her constituents in a manner as fully as other councillors. By all means, if Councillor Giroux wants to avail herself of further training at the town's expense, as well as all the rest of the councillors and mayor at this sitting down here tonight, that is your choice. But attempting to order the councillor to do so, again, after she has already been penalized as a result of past IC complaints, demonstrates a retaliatory demeanor and further erodes public confidence in this term of council. Quite simply, this would not be a good look and would contribute to the serious non-confidence in the public mind that council has lost its way. This council has become the talk of the town, and not for good reasons, and not solely due to one councillor's conduct. Before closing my delegation, I would like to share a recent quote by our former Prime Minister of Canada, the Honourable Jean Chrétien, a true leader and inspiration to every Canadian. The current and future generations of political leaders should remember they are not each other's enemies. They are our opponents. Nobody ever loved the cut and thrust of politics more than me, but I always understood that each of us was trying to make a positive contribution to make our community or country a better place. That spirit is more important now than ever as we address this new challenge. Our leaders should keep that in mind. Viva la Canada. I am here tonight to ask you to commit to working together for the betterment of our community and the Canada and Grimsby we so proudly call our home. I hope you seriously consider the wise words and advice of Jean Chrétien before voting on this motion. Voting yes to this motion gives further incentive and drive for those people who are already lining up and publicly vowing to take those seats you sit in tonight, less than 2 years down the road. They pledge to truly represent the residents of Grimsby for positive change that benefits everyone in our town. However, there is still time to correct courses. It's a new year and a new day, and by defeating this motion, by voting no, it shows you are truly committed to all of the residents in Grimsby, that you value the voice of all your constituents and share the vision of moving the town forward in the most positive manner. Viva la Grimsby. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening.
Thank you, Annette. Can I have a mover and seconder to receive the delegation? Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Howe. Any questions? Seeing no questions. Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that the delegation from Annette Givens be received. All in favor? That's carried. All right, the motion is now on the floor for discussion. First off, I'd like all of the parts voted on separately. Any other further discussion on the resolution? Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I want to thank Annette for her presentation. She said a lot of what I wanted to say. Earlier in the year when we discussed punitive measures, I recommended education first and foremost. I thought that that was a very important part of any kind of punishment that we impose as a council. We've already put forward punishments repeatedly on Councillor Charwa. My belief is if there's another transgression, absolutely, this should be a consideration. This should be the next step. But I also believe that if we had done this in the first place, we might not have gotten to the second or third or fourth or whatever number of complaints there have been. I think that education should have been the first thing that we did, not the last thing that we're doing. And so, as was mentioned by Ms. Gibbons, these have already been decided on. All of those things that we've talked about have already been decided on. This is further punishment for something that's already been punished. So I don't disagree that education is important. I in fact emphasized it earlier on in the first time we had this discussion. I just don't think that we should be punishing something again. So if there's another transgression, or if any council member is found guilty of integrity report, of integrity issues, I think that education should be the first place that we start. That should, before we get to suspension, before we get to anything else. So that's why I'm going to be voting against this, because I think we've already dealt with this issue. I'm surprised that we were able to bring this forward to council tonight, frankly, because it's not of urgency, and definitely not something that needed to be dealt with tonight. So it's interesting that we have a process in place where you have to bring forward a notice of motion, and generally, if there is a process where we overlook that notice of motion and try to bring it forward quickly, it's because there's a dire urgency to that matter. I didn't see any dire urgency tonight, and that's why I voted against bringing it forward tonight. And I still don't think that it should have been brought forward tonight. I think it should have followed through the procedures that we have in place as a council. Thank you.
Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I think we all kind of suggested doing the education in the beginning, but since then, there's begun to be provincial action on the issue of council conduct. They've actually, as you all know, tabled the bill to enable the creation of a standard municipal code of conduct, and that requires code of conduct training for councillors and board members, as well as to establish a consistent inquiry process for the integrity commissioners. So I think a little bit of this is we've been unable to act on that as we wait for that legislation to reveal itself. But I just want to say thank the delegate as well too. I agree, and I said this in my campaign, council is an elected right, and Councillor Charwa, although I may not agree, represents every single person who voted for, which is absolutely to be respected. But contrary to that, committees are a privilege, and committees are a construct of council. So serving your town at the committee level, in my opinion, is not a right given to you by winning an election. The councillor stated earlier tonight that these IC reports has affected your decision to withdraw from a controversial decision at the committee level, and it's one that many residents are wanting to see resolved and have been waiting some serious time to see resolved. So I think a suspension, or either a temporary suspension or removal from the committee, should be considered tonight. This, to me, I think does solve the issue of expensive IC reports, which none of us want to see. It's just the process we're bound to. And no matter what side you think is right or wrong, the offender or the complainer, I think it also is important to remember that this councillor has been on both sides of the coin, filing IC councillors as a resident and a councillor. So that is the path we're on, in my view.
Councillor Vardy.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I brought this forward in the new year in the hopes that we won't have an IC number 7. My concern is that after IC number 1, we'd think that we wouldn't get an IC number 2. And after IC number 2, we wouldn't think we'd get a number 3. And after number 3, we wouldn't think we'd get a number 4. But after number 4, we wouldn't think we'd get a number 5. And after number 5, we wouldn't think we'd get a number 6. So my hope was that a training component and some time for some personal reflection would give the councillor an opportunity to steer her participation on council in a more positive way. I guess I take exception to sort of how much money is spent on IC complaints. If there was not an infraction, there would not be a complaint. The reason we have a code of conduct is to govern our collective behavior. And when someone breaks that code of conduct, the only recourse to try and curb that is IC. There aren't any other options. So, you know, we're looking at going into this, the new year. We've got 2 years left. Let's have some training, an opportunity for the councillor to, you know, reassess where she's at. It does concern me that after 6 breaches of the code of conduct, she is yet to offer any kind of apology, take accountability for her actions. I mean, and the punishment, while they've been progressive, does not seem to have been a deterrent for breaching the code of conduct. So my hope was that this would be a way that perhaps would end up in a more positive outcome and not have number 7. And because it's sad. To me, it's very, very sad. I had high hopes for this councillor at the very beginning, and I know she works very hard. But at the same time, she's breached the code of conduct, and that leaves us. I mean, it's like saying, you know, if someone runs through a stop sign, you're not supposed to give them a ticket. I mean, if you break the law, and these are the laws of council. So, you know, my hope is for an improved future and a more collegial relationship with this councillor. Thank you.
Councillor Kirstein.
Thank you, through Chair. So I'm in favor of the training. However, I will be asking for a friendly amendment on the training, and that the training, instead of the AMO training, which I believe is quite pricey, I think it'd be beneficial for the entire council to undergo training. So I think all of us could use some training in, you know, our roles in conflict resolution and stuff like that. I think that would be beneficial. We have 2 years left. As for the removal of the chair, I will not support that. I am on that committee. Councillor Chua is an amazing chair. I have never heard any complaints from the committee, and I will let Councillor Bradzi know that she was actually she was elected by the committee and voted on by the committee to be the chair. In that process 2 years ago, it was voted on by the committee, which is the residents. And we had this instance in the previous council where there was a removal of a chair and by council. And I believe, actually, Councillor Vardy, it was you that said, in regards to Council Bothwell, she was elected by the committee, and I think it would be inappropriate for us to override that. And I'm going to agree with you and apply it to this situation. I think it's inappropriate for us to override that unless there were complaints by the committee, but I have not seen that. The committee functions, in my opinion, great. It's very productive, so I cannot support that. The other thing I have a concern with is this motion and the timing of this motion. I do know that before the last council meeting where the punishment was put out to Councillor Chua, that she was actually trolled on social media with this motion. There was a profile that trolled her that gave 1, 2, and 3, and the first one was 1, Deputy Mayor gone. 2, 120-day suspension, 3, removal of chair from committees. And then I think there was like a popcorn emoji. And that was a threat before the meeting. And then the next day after the meeting, there were comments taunting her. And number 1, it said January meeting. Number 2, it said, oh, you got away with 60 days. Number 3, it said January meeting. So I feel like this is a targeted attack. It's not, I mean, it's been planned for at least a couple of months. So I'm not sure if that was you trolling her. I don't believe it was, but I don't know.
Point of order. That is.
No, I said I'm not sure if it was you.
No, point of order. Point of
Yeah,
order.
that's completely out of order.
Completely out of line. Yourself removed. You're talking about, so I can't even see.
Point of order. I don't want to be talking about Facebook conduct.
No.
We're here to talk about town business. Let's go.
Stay on top.
Come on.
I'm not going to sit here and
Just
be
a point of
insulted.
clarification,
I agree.
Councillor Korsanji, did you want a separate council training session and a Councillor Sharwa training session? One for everyone? All right. So that'd be
I was going to
noted.
say I don't believe it was you, but
Then why raise it? Why raise it?
because it's important. You brought forward the motion,
Yeah.
so.
Come on.
Also, do you have a
Okay.
second, do you have a
Insulting.
seconder for that amendment?
Amendment, would anybody second training for everybody? Okay.
Councillor Sharwa,
Is she done?
are you finished? All right. Councillor Sharwa.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. First, I'm just going to clarify some of the comments that you had made that were inaccurate. So, Councillor, for the Integrity Commissioner complaints 1, 2, and 3, I received them all on the same day. So I received them on December 22nd. The 2 were brought forward by Councillor Freak. The 3rd was brought forward by Councillor Mayor Jordan. I got them a few days before Christmas. He processed Mayor Jordan's, even though it was 3rd, he processed that first. I got 15 days right off the bat. And then I got 45 days because I should have known better. However, all 3 were in at the same time, so I didn't get a warning. The 4th one was my reprimand for allegedly removing Councillor Freak from Facebook. And the 5th and 6th were from the recording of GDAC, which was a 60-day suspension. So actually in that motion, you actually, even though I pointed it out to you, it is wrong. So I will continue with the rest, but I just wanted to clarify some of your points were wrong there. So this notice of motion single-handedly demonstrates malice, bias, and harassment by the councillors who have brought this forward today. To make matters worse, it was brought to the clerk for publishing, peppered with basic information incorrectly reported. One would expect that bringing something so potentially damaging to an individual's reputation would at minimum be fact-checked prior to submission. Since both councillors failed to check the accuracy of their statements, it went on the public agenda and was quickly circulated to thousands of residents across Niagara through various social media channels, where they are now posted forever with incorrect information. Your negligence was not only unprofessional, it was reckless, and some argue intended to damage my reputation or even an attempt to push me to resign from council and future politics altogether, which I will not do. The motion before you requests that I be removed as chair of the Community Services Committee. It is well known, as I've stated in meetings and online, that chairing this committee and seeing the work we have accomplished to better our community has been the highlight of my term on council. Removing me from this role seems to be a clear retaliation purely out of spite. In fact, when Councillor Bothwell was unfairly removed from her position as chair of the Heritage Committee in the last term of council, Councillor Vardy stated how undemocratic it was to remove a committee-appointed chair and how damaging doing so was to the committee, as Councillor Bothwell was the most qualified for the chair position. If we were to apply the same rules to my position as chair, it would be obvious that I have the most education in community services, I have the most work experience in both the public and private sectors in community services, and having lived in Grimsby for close to 40 years with an active family, I've had the most participation in community services programs than any other councillor or committee member. Additionally, I have an excellent working relationship with community services staff, the committee lay members, past and present, the council committee members, and and the public. I bring knowledge, experience, and positivity to every Community Services Committee meeting I chair. There has never been a complaint challenging my effectiveness as the chair of the Community Services. The suggestion of removing such a qualified and passionate chair who was democratically appointed by the committee itself is a demonstration of nothing other than malice. The motion before you also demonstrates the clear bias of the councillors who brought this forward. All Integrity Commissioner complaints have already come to council, and the recommendations for punishments by our council have been voted on. At all 4 of the council meetings in which the Integrity Commissioner brought forward his final report and recommendations, we saw the same 3 councillors not accept the recommended punishment by the Integrity Commissioner. We saw the same 3 members of council consistently request council consider doubling the punishment or even asking for the maximum punishment allowable. These punitive punishments usually reserved for the most egregious complaints such as municipal conflicts of interest, sexual harassment, violence, or hate speech. While one might argue that the suggestion to double the punishments was excessive and disproportionate, it was also consistent in requesting more punishment than recommended by our Integrity Commissioner on all 4 occasions. And today we see that although all the Integrity Commissioner complaints filed against me have been reported, voted on, ending the process, there is now a new attempt to bring more negative attention, ill will, and retribution outside the proper process. The motion speaks to the bias and ongoing retribution. Now consider this motion be passed, and I bring it forward to court for review. The court will look back at case law for similar cases in the past. They will see Chiarelli versus the City of Ottawa, in which the Ottawa councillor accused of sexually harassing multiple female staff members on multiple occasions appealed his suspension of pay based on bias. And in this appeal, despite the serious nature of the actions, the court found the Ottawa Council did in fact show bias in its recommendations of penalty. Now I'd like you to reflect on this motion.
You can continue.
Thank you. Now I'd like you to reflect on this notice of motion with all Integrity Commissioner reports having been already voted on and completed. If Councillor Chiarelli proved his council was biased, do you think I would establish bias from this motion? I believe I can. This motion before you also demonstrates harassment. Harassment within council members falls under the Ontario Health and Safety Act, which is defined as the following: engaging in a course of vexatious comment or conduct against a worker in a workplace that is known or ought to reasonably be known as unwelcome, and includes workplace sexual harassment. It goes on to say, workplace harassment can include unwelcome and or repeated words or actions that are known or should be known to be offensive, embarrassing, humiliating, or demeaning to a worker or group of workers. It can also include behavior that intimidates, isolates, or even discriminates against a worker or group of workers in the workplace that are unwelcome. Now knowing the legal definition of harassment and reflecting on this motion with malice and bias established, and knowing all Integrity Commissioner complaints filed against me have come to council and being completed, do you think this motion would be considered a form of harassment? I do. I've been quoted in numerous Integrity Commissioner complaints stating that I've felt harassed by some members of councils. But here are a few reactions to this motion. We saw that beyond the quick interest in this story on social media, a newspaper reported on this before it even came to council as a notice of motion. How often do you hear articles of notices of motion before they even discussed at council? Yet something about this motion appeared newsworthy. Why? Now consider the title of the article from Niagara this week. Veronica Sharwa, Target. A fellow Grimsby councillor's motion. Notice the word target. Target definition, a person, object, or place selected to be the aim of an attack. This article was also printed in the Hamilton Spectator and the Welland Tribune. Here's another reaction. The clerk asked to speak with me prior to the publishing of the agenda because she wanted to bring an item to my attention, to which I thank her for. It was on the phone that she explained there was a notice of motion about me from another councillor, to which she said I wasn't going to be happy about it. Now, would one ought to reasonably know this motion would be unwelcome? I believe so. Now reflecting on this motion with bias and malice established and all Integrity Commissioner reports having been already voted on and completed, and hearing how people quickly reacted to this motion, do you think I could demonstrate harassment? I believe I can. In conclusion, I'm moving forward and continuing to work for our residents with or without your support. Should you choose to vote yes to this motion, you are putting your individual name to support the continued harassment, bias, and malice of a council colleague, and then we will then await the opinion of the courts. Thank you.
Councillor DeVoley.
Mayor Jordan, I too would like to speak to this motion. And I'd like to start by saying that my comments are similar to the comments I made back in April when we had the very first case come before us. And that is that the principles that I think we should always be led by are whether the individual shows remorse, whether they acknowledge that what they did was wrong and how they did not meet the standards that were in front of them, and whether they feel bad for their actions. And unfortunately, I have not seen that through 6 complaints. The second principle I think we need to live by is whether there is remediation, whether the steps have been taken by the individual to make amends or to learn from this. And I think the repetition of 6 cases, of course, is an indication that we did not see remediation. And the third factor that I said we needed to live by at that time was the risk of reoffense. And I guess 6 is evidence of where we landed in all of this. I would like to just add some miscellaneous comments to all of this. And there were some comments made in the presentation too. So one does not need to be a deputy mayor or a chair or a vice chair to be effective as a councillor. I am on some committees, but not on other committees in that position, that I would truly believe that I am still an effective committee member, even if I am not leading the committee meeting in that particular way. So I don't think that the recommendation to remove someone as chair or vice chair or even deputy mayor is revenge or punishment. It is very small in the big scheme of things. I think during my time as the deputy mayor, I was called on twice, once to chair part of the meeting and once to appear at an event in place of the mayor who could not attend. These are small things. But I did just want to say that, and to reiterate, that just because someone is not the chair or deputy chair doesn't mean that they can't still work as a councillor and be effective, both behind the scenes and in meetings. Secondly, to the allegation that, you know, some of this was preordained prior to that, I would like to unequivocally state that I never post on social media, and when I do, it is to a very small private group that consists only of my family and very, very close friends. So I'm not sure what the posting was about, never saw it, and I have no background in it, and I can tell you that I was not motivated by any of that. So I'm not sure, I guess, as we go through all of this, as to these things that we are suggesting and recommending are not huge, but I think they are an indication of a situation where people have lost faith in the person, in this case, our fellow councillor, and that we would like some time for this person to begin to understand the situation, to show some remorse, and as I said, to show that they understand the principles of remediation, that they take some steps to actually try and understand and improve their behavior so that this does not happen again. And as you can tell from our comments, and even as you can tell from the comments in earlier meetings, you know, revenge often comes with anger. And I don't think you hear anger from anybody around this table. Disappointment, for sure. Wishing that there were some correction going forward, for sure. And at this point in time, you know, I think the loss and the resolution is about a loss, a temporary loss, if all goes well, of some leadership. And even then, I don't think it's absolutely critical. It's an example of losing leadership and that we have lost faith in that person in that leadership role. But I would not consider this in any way to mean that a councillor cannot actually do their job without being in that role. Thank you.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have some procedural questions for the clerk because I've never had to deal with anything like this before, so I just want to get some clarification on a few things. So can the clerk clarify whether it's procedurally permissible for council to impose additional penalties for a matter where sanctions were already decided and finalized by council? Is my first question. And then I've got a couple more.
I cannot, through the chair, I cannot confirm that, but I can tell you that any item that has been decided by council can be reconsidered, which is how the chair and the deputy mayor items would be reconsiderations and therefore would require a 2/3 majority vote.
Thank you. That answers one of my other questions about whether it's a reconsideration. So further to that, does council have the authority to impose additional sanctions beyond what the integrity commissioner originally recommended for the same incidents? And if so, under what circumstances?
Again, these are questions for legal. I'm not able to answer those.
Okay, but we're reconsidering something. Should we be reconsidering something if we don't know the legal answer to a question, I guess, is my next question then.
Sure. Through the chair, I can advise I've consulted with legal and they've confirmed that these can be on the agenda.
Councillor Sharwell.
I would just, thank you through Mayor, get an explanation from the mover and the seconder if how this motion about me specifically chairing the community services, knowing that there's been no complaints, I'm the most qualified, how this is anything other than malice. I'll start with you, Councillor Vardy. How is removing me, how is removing? Start with whoever we decide to start with. Delight, do you want to address that?
I think I already did, Mayor Jordan, if I could address that when I said, you know, this is not based on revenge or malice on my part. It is based upon a continuing disappointment and in the performance. And I would also like to caution some of the comments here and say that I think that when we look at qualifications for people in leadership positions, we're not just looking at technical qualifications and who has the education in a particular area. We're also looking at governance and leadership qualifications. And in those particular instances, I will challenge the comments by asking the councillor how many boards and committees she has sat on in the last 20 years and where she gains this governance experience. So we looked at this and said, this is about leadership. This is about governance. This is about, leading the team forward. And at this point in time, I believe that if we were in a different organization, if I sat on a board of directors of a company, and if we had someone who was doing things like this, we probably would have asked them to leave the organization or their role as a director. We can't do that in this case. All we can do is suggest that they step back from their position as a chair or as deputy mayor. In fact, we're not asking, we're putting a resolution forward to actually suggest that. So I don't know where the idea came from to suggest this is malice. I can tell you that it is not. You'll see in those complaints, none of them were put forward by me. And just to correct something, even when there was a resolution to amend the Integrity Commissioner's suspension to a higher number of days, I did not vote for that, and I actually voted for the lesser number of days in line with what the Integrity Commissioner suggested. So I will say that I am baffled by the comments on malice, and I don't feel any.
Councillor Vardy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'll state off the top, I have no malice towards you, no ill will towards you, but I would like to see a course correction. And I think after 6 breaches of the code of conduct, I'm, over Christmas, I'm thinking what haven't we tried that could make this better? So I thought a period of self-reflection, to be able to step away from some duties, to give you some time to reflect on how you have 6 breaches of a code of conduct, in the space of, a year. and then some training in the hopes that the next 2 years will be more positive than the last 2. So I'll also state unequivocally, I mean, I don't go on social media. I don't comment on social media. I think the last thing I posted was my son getting engaged or something, but so I don't make those comments. So they didn't come from me. And I want to make that really clear, because I certainly don't like that inference, because that's not how I operate, so.
Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Yeah, I just also want to state that there's no malice coming from me. I think, but I do think the fact that this has been taken a little bit more seriously shows merit to its effectiveness as a remedial measure. And I also just want to put a question forward to the clerk. When consulting with legal, what was the response with removal from committees?
Through the chair, anything that council has given through resolution or bylaw is something that can be reconsidered in accordance to our procedural bylaw. So if you are appointed to a committee, if you're appointed to a chair, that is something that's done through resolution that can be reconsidered.
Thank you very much. Just going in step with Mayor Jordan's suggestion that we itemize and split into several different votes. Can I ask that we reconsider that as one of the options?
The resolution you're adding is to remove Councillor Charwa from community services? All right, so you'd need a seconder for that. Yeah, I added the separating them out, but are you adding a further recommendation? All right, okay. Yeah, you need to put forward an actual motion and you need to have a seconder.
To what?
I say I have no interest in financial penalties.
I'm sorry, I'm going to ask that the councillor repeat that on the microphone so we can all hear.
I think we've all said at every integrity commissioner that we aren't very interested in financial remuneration penalties. I think a suspension of fulfilling committee duties is more effective, and by your reaction, I think that is merit of that.
Sorry, I'm talking about what you just asked the mayor to add to this. So further penalty, if you could just say that loudly.
I ask that we also include as an option suspending said councillor from the committee until such training has been completed.
Do you have a period of time? Do you have?
6 months, sure.
Pardon me?
That's ridiculous.
And
is this an add-on?
Who's your seconder? All right, so this is where we're at now. We have an amendment on the floor. We'll vote on that first. So I'll read that. Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that Councillor Charwa be suspended from community services for 6 months until training is complete. So we'll vote on that through eScribe. Then we'll continue. Councillor Howe.
By doing that, the councillor has no committee appointments or responsibilities whatsoever. Because right now, you're only doing the one.
Well, it's on the floor, so we'll vote on it, so.
Just going to say one other comment.
Councillor DeVoli.
Perhaps we should redo the order that we consider them in, because if we remove her from the committee, in essence, we have removed her as chair and deputy chair of the first recommendation. So shouldn't it be the last one?
Just for clarification, this is for 6 months.
Yes.
The other resolution is for the rest of the term.
Procedural question?
Yes, that is true.
Through you, Mayor.
DeFlavio.
Through you to the clerk, wouldn't the first thing we need to do be reconsider? Because all of this is a reconsideration of a previous decision. So wouldn't the first thing we need to do be get a 2/3 majority to reconsider?
It was reconsidered to have it on the floor tonight. So that's the first reconsideration.
But it wasn't stated as a reconsideration. It was stated as a notice of motion. So wouldn't it need to be a reconsideration?
They'll all be reconsidered, so this has to get 2/3.
That one has, yeah,
2/3.
Oh, every one of them has to have 2/3?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Except for the training. I think that's a simple majority. Yeah, the amendments on the floor, can we vote on the e-scribe? Councillor Sharwa.
So a clarification, though, if this is a reconsideration, wouldn't it have to have come from somebody that had voted no? So Councillor Vardy voted yes, because she was always for doubling punishment. So she voted yes. So
That is incorrect statement. I never said it was for doubling the punishment.
didn't you double the punishments?
It comes from the prevailing side, and all of these went through, so.
Please try to be accurate.
Through the chair, this is a reconsideration of committee appointments, and it's in the procedural bylaw, it's the prevailing side, which in this case would be yes, because everybody voted yes for these committee appointments. It's the exact same scenario as the deputy mayor. That was voted without anybody on the opposite side, and it's the same with the chair appointment. Nobody voted on the other side, so it's the prevailing side that can put forward a motion.
All right, so I've read the resolution. You can vote on it on e-scribe. The resolution moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Vardy, resolved that Councillor Sharwa be suspended from community services.
Okay, so sorry, I'm just going to ask for a point of order, because somebody actually has told me that you can't actually go back and change this. It's either a suspension of a pay or one or the other. So you can't tack on more.
This is not tied to the Integrity Commissioner. This is a procedural of council. And I do believe you did declare a conflict of interest, so. All right, that was defeated.
So the next one will go to the other side, and
All
this
right.
requires 2/3.
Now it moves back to the original resolution, that's item A. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor DeVoli. Resolved that Councillor Sharwa be immediately removed as chair and or deputy chair from any and all council standing committees, advisory committees, and subcommittees for the term of council, but be allowed to continue as a member of one of the committees the one committee she currently sits on. And e-scribe. And that's defeated. All right, and now this is the second amendment we're at. It was moved by Councillor Korstanji that item B be amended that all of council undergo training about ethical governance, council code of conduct, and working well within a team environment. We need a seconder for this.
Am I allowed to second, or am I not?
No. I think he declared a conflict. So.
On this item, I don't know if I...
DeFlavio is seconded. Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Resolved that item B be amended that all of council undergo training about ethical governance, council code of conduct, and working well within a team environment. E-scribe, please.
That means the motion for her to take.
All right, that was carried. All right. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Davoli. Resolved that Councillor Charwa be prohibited from assuming the role of Deputy Mayor during this term of council. Please vote on e-scribe. And that's carried. All right, can I have a mover and seconder for the bylaws? Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaws 25-01 and 25-02, and that same be read a first time, considered, and passed. All in favor? That's carried. All right, the next meeting will be the Budget Committee of the Whole, scheduled for January 27th, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. The next council meeting is scheduled on February 10th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. Can I have a mover and seconder for the confirming bylaw? Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 25-03, and that same be read a first time, considered, and passed. All in favor? That's carried. Meeting is adjourned. Good night, everyone. Have a good evening.